you're always kind of mysterious about how you got to Nicaragua. I mean, why Nicaragua?
I
This
don't
was
mean to be.
1978.
I just think I look back and it is truly bizarre in some fashion. I mean, I was photographing at the time Santa Clauses on Fifth Avenue. They lived a block from me. The Volunteers of America was right on Houston, near the Bowery. I lived a block from there. And early at 5 in the morning, I saw these guys trucking out one day and saw them on the subway and just followed them, and ended up spending several weeks following them day after day. And I was very interested in the trespassing, you know, this notion that they would live essentially as alcoholics one day and then costume themselves and be magical the next. And you know, the people who would roll up their windows as they passed them on the Bowery would happily have their kids bouncing on their knees when they were up on 57th Street. And that juxtaposition, you know, really did engage me for a period of time. And I wanted to follow their lives into the spring and the downside after Christmas. And I read somewhere in the paper of the New York Times, I can't remember what page, but it wasn't exactly the front page. In fact, I think it was an op-ed letter that had come from a senator who had met Pedro Joaquin Chamorro, who had just been assassinated. So this was January '78. And he was writing about Nicaragua in the context of how it was that the Americans had been supporting Somoza for so long, and here was this opposition figure murdered in the streets. And I remember reading it, but it didn't affect anything in terms of my own plans. But then weeks and then months later, I kept seeing, you know, in that little Around the World section of the New York Times, little clips, you know, the students were boycotting the university or the businessmen were closing down their factories for a day. And there were sort of small little clues that something was in process. And it wasn't at all an armed insurrection at that point. It was very much like what I had experienced in the 60s. So probably the language of that revolt seemed familiar enough that, though it was a foreign place, I just became curious.